So welcome students, and most importantly, welcome stakeholders for Scottdale. My name's Ellen Dunham-Jones. I'm professor and director at Georgia Tech and director of the Urban Design degree, and leading this group of students in their hypothetical proposals for 4 different sites around and including the DeKalb Farmers Market. I want to issue my thanks to Commissioner Terry. We met last week with Commissioner Bradshaw, and it's really wonderful to have their support for this. Again, these are just hypothetical proposals, but we want them to be as useful as possible. So we really appreciate the opportunity to get feedback. Thanks to Jacob Vallow and others at MARTA, and Courtney and Zach from VIA. The goal of this studio is academic. We are really looking at, can we transform very auto-dependent areas into being more car light or even car free. So VIA is a microtransit provider. It's on-demand van taxi service, and we're assuming different ways to try to leverage having VIA service combined with MARTA bus and scooter and bus and walkability and all those things to just enable more folks living in Scottdale to choose to get by with one less car or even none. So especially big shout out and thanks to anyone from the community who is taking the time to listen to this and provide us feedback. That is just enormously, enormously helpful. This is a mixed group of students. These are all graduate students, but some of them are urban design students who already have an architecture degree. Some of them are getting their professional architecture degree. And on most of the teams, there's also a student who's in the high performance building program. So the purpose of today is primarily to get feedback on the schemes, where they are so far. We have 1 more month to finish up and refine these proposals. I don't expect major changes and, really big major proposals of how they should change. Probably they won't have time to really be quite as useful. But we really do look forward to your comments about how the proposals could better serve the community. So this, as I said, this is a class in urban design where we try to merge the practical with the visionary, but we don't in this class get into the specifics of how much will it cost, or what are all the different regulatory requirements that might have to be changed. It's useful if I would certainly encourage anyone to put links in the chat if there are suggestions, especially that you have, that you think we should be making as recommendations. In the end, we will produce a final studio report that will be available publicly online. And we're certainly happy to mention sort of cost issues and regulatory changes that might be needed, but that's not really our focus is design. So each team will present for 12 to 15 minutes, followed by 10 to 12 minutes of feedback. And then at the very end, we hopefully, if we stick to the schedule, we'll still have time for a few minutes of just general comments. Please feel free to use the chat function if you aren't able to have the time to provide some feedback or make a comment verbally. Add links again of things that you think the students should look at. So with that, I am ready to tell Team 4 to present. I believe that was the order. Am I surprised? I'm seeing a look of some surprise, but Team 4, are you? We're going to start with both of the schemes that have MARTA proposals, since Jacob can't be here for the whole time.
So Vash, can I start?
Yeah, I can share the screen. Yeah. Hey everyone, Okay, so I'm Subhash here. So next slide. So we are zone 4. We are situated near the Avondale Mara station and the Mara area. Next slide. So the highlighted portion is our site. And so as we all know, it's like quite close to the DeKalb's Farmers Market in terms of proximity from the Mara station. Next slide. And so the white circles are the ones with the one mile radius. So one of the main things that we noticed that was important in a site was the proximity to the DeKalb Farmers Market and how the users can easily access from the closest station, Avondale. So this kind of makes the Zone 4 as a portal towards Scottdale. Next slide. And this is also enhanced by the fact that it's being run through by the East Ponds de Leon, which kind of covers the entire length of Scottdale and also touches upon all the 4 zones. So East Ponds de Leon is kind of like a crucial factor that we had taken into consideration as to how we are going to treat it to enhance the experience of this neighborhood. Next slide. And we also took a look at how the edge conditions were throughout. And I think most of you would be knowing like how these conditions are. But some of the things that we found out were near the North Arcadia Avenue, where there's recently new developed multifamily development. There we found a creek right behind the Wallace Coffee Shop, which is mostly unused. So we thought like that was like a good potential in our side. Apart from that, like at one end, like we have the Publix, and towards Mata Aurelia we have a bunch of greenery that kind of like frames this whole East Ponce Leon. Next slide. And we also like took a study at what are the context to better understand like how the situation is working in our zone. So the highlighted portion in black, that's the portion that we are completely focusing on. And to understand this, we were surrounded by like some light industries and multifamily residences in the Mata Aurelia. Next slide. And like mentioned earlier, like the Avondale Mata was like the gateway towards this zone. So that was also an important factor in terms of deciding what type of connectivity that we want to establish in our site. Next slide. And as we go further, like we found out that like this intersection, which kind of demarcates our zone into 4 distinct portions. So the parcel number 1 is where most of the car businesses and some of the Oriental market spaces happening, and the parcel 2 is where a lot of dog businesses are happening, and parcel 3 is some of the storage warehouses and some more car industries. And the part 4 is where the Mata property is there. So the part 4 is was one of our main biggest opportunity in terms of development. Next slide. And we also like took a study at how the density is working around our site. As you can see towards the left side, there's like a lot of smaller residential units, and in our zone especially, like there was not much residential units that were like taking place. So maybe that was the reason why there's like a lack of sense of neighborhood throughout this zone. Next slide. And we also like took a look at what are the parcel allocations throughout the site to understand how further development can happen in terms of laying out roads or car-free zones. Next slide. And so although figuratively like East Ponds might be the high point of a talking, but literally like that's kind of like the low points in terms of topography, like the North Arcadia and the Mata Aurelia like at an average of 20 feet above the East Pond, so which kind of creates like this bathtub effect on our site, and which can be a crucial factor when we talk about like stormwater management in our design developments. Next slide. Next slide. Next slide. So there were like 3 main issues throughout the site that we found out. So one of the first thing was how the parking was taking most of the frontages, because of which the pedestrian sidewalks wasn't equally distributed. Most of the time, we had to walk on just green spaces rather than sidewalks. Next slide. And the lack of public infrastructure like throughout the area was imminent, which is also uh, be it in terms of recreational or leisure, the public spaces within this area was of scarcity. Next slide. And now Negar will be taking you through the approach of a design.
Sorry. Hi, my name is Negar, and I want to talk about our master plan and our ideas. As Subhash mentioned, we had lots of challenges in our site, like the lack of connectivity, mobility, walkability, green infrastructure, and density. And we try to address all these issues. At first, we realized that the East Ponds Avenue is really important, which is in the middle of our site. That connects the Avondale Market to the farmer market. And also the intersection, it's an intersection with DeKalb Way, can make a very important intersection that has separated our site into 4 different parts. So we decided to put a mobility hub in this intersection because it would be more accessible for the residents or all the users there or the people who want to go to farmer market. And and also we have the other sub mobility hubs in the other part of our site near the Avondale MARTA station. And these mobility hubs would be like this, that we have the drop-off areas, or we have the shared bicycle or scooter, or the area for rest with shadow, and that place would be more pleasant for people to whenever they are waiting for the bus or their cars. So this kind of area would encourage people to use public transportation, and it would help that area to be more car-free and car-light. The other thing that we decided is to work on the edge of the Ponds Street to make it more, to have more density and put more buildings and retails there to make it activated. So it would be more safe for walk. So this area, we would have lots of retails and stores and mixed-use buildings there. The other side of our design is about the green infrastructure, that we realized that we have very good green lines in our site, and we decided to connect all these lines together. And also we thought how we can make a connection between these areas and have a good and have a strong green infrastructure into our site. And now we have the Stone Mountain Trail in our site, but we decided to add another eco trail near our hard edges around our site and near the green lines. And we wanted to put more public areas in our site. For example, here is the plaza at the beginning of the eco trail. This place we wanted to keep the building and make it as a rec center with lots of sports park. And now we have the buildings here that they have the businesses related to the dogs. And we want to keep the buildings and businesses and make this place as a dog park. And also we have a park here. So our final public network would be like this, that we wanted to make connection as much as possible between all these separated parts, with walkable streets, with vehicular streets, eco trail, intersections, public area. We wanted to have stronger connection between all these layers. And then for the building types, at first I want to start with MARTA. that we decided to put the lots of housing here for the MARTA's workers, and in the next phases, we want to build residential on top of the rail yards. And then we have the mixed-use building around the Ponce Street, and also all these yellow areas are the car-free housing areas, residential areas, and the red areas are the commercial, maybe offices or restaurants, cafes near the eco trail, and here near the trail again, and also the antique shop and dog park. And this area is recreational center. And this is our final design. Yeah, I can.
Okay, I'm Isaiah. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Okay, now I'm going to go through more in depth how we're planning to handle connecting all of these various um, forces that are at play on our site. So as you can see, overview of the aerial view, we have the intersection, which we're highlighting. So you can see as we go through all the zones, how you are in relation to East Ponce and that intersection that we're treating as extremely important. And the Scottdale Cliff Trail that is linking all of our interventions together. And so next slide, please. And so starting with the MARTA hub and the MARTA yard, at that intersection again, you can see highlighted is where we are going to put the MARTA hub to facilitate the car-free housing that we are planning to, that we are proposing for the site at large. Next slide, please. And this is a view looking from the location we're planning to place the MARTA hub. So this is looking down East Ponce, northeast. And so you can see the intersection again that we're highlighting, and how this would manifest in reality. And next slide, please. And so moving across the street to the um, more of the retail and housing farther back towards the eco trail, we are connecting North Arcadia Avenue to the rest of the lower site. As you can see at the lower left-hand corner, there's Publix parking that is dividing the site with about like a 20-foot high cliff, and this creates a pedestrian barrier that that presents connectivity issues to our site. So we're using this creek that runs along the apartments that are along that trail, and we're extending the path up that elevation with a plaza where those two stars are, and so that is linking the higher portion of the site to the lower portion of the site to the rest of the development and the housing that we're proposing. Next slide, please. And so these are some quick views from from North Arcadia at the top of that trailhead and lower where the creek would be. And have to add the creek, but imagine there would be a creek running along that path. That's what you'd see when you'd go to the site. Next slide, please. And so these are some views of, again, on East Ponce, the storefronts, and then it's actually in the wrong order. This is, this second slide is, the second picture is actually in another zone. So I'll get to that in a second. Next slide, please. So yeah, that second picture was actually from the center of this car-free oriented neighborhood at the intersection that's highlighted in blue. Again, the intersection, and along that street edge, we're activating that with retail on the lower portion, and then on the second and third floor, we have apartments, and then moving further back towards where the star is, what we're calling the industrial lane, that is adjacent to one of our other studio made sites. We have a trail running between that, extending the Stone Mountain bike path. And so this is primarily to serve as a transportation artery for a lot of this car-free residential development that we're proposing. And so ideally, this would be, like I said, a transportation artery for alternative means of transportation, like bikes, scooters, and all the other electric
Okay.
means of
Isaiah,
transportation we have today.
Isaiah, your time is up, so please wrap up as quickly as possible.
Okay, next slide. And this is a section from East Ponce to the industrial lane and showing everything in between it with all the housing types. And next slide. And yeah, you can see this one, same thing.
Yeah, we'll just quickly run through this. One of the things that we were really excited about was the extension of the MARTA rail yard, and if we can actually build on top of it. Next slide, please. And how like this can connect the MNL estates and towards the other side with the East Ponds Dion and extending up until towards North Arcadia. Next slide, please. We're also thinking about how the density on top of the rail yard can happen. Like, can it be really dense, or can it just have the characters of the surrounding neighborhood? Next slide. And like this is like kind of like the vision that we have for now, but this is something that we're still working on, and how this neighborhood can also be a sustainable unit by itself, but also be integrated within its local context. So that's it from us.
All right. Thank you so much. Why don't you guys go back to one of your master plan slides, and we'll sort of leave that up and open for comments. Don't be shy. Who wants to talk first? I'll start calling on names if no one volunteers.
Ellen, I'll go first. This is Jacob.
Great.
I just got a few minutes. I got to jump to a 1 o'clock, but first of all, incredible work. I really think it's awesome that what y'all pulled together in a short amount of time. And now I think there's some really fun things to think about here that you've presented. I like the sort of mix and density. Well, first of all, I love the connectivity and how you approach that. Not just on the MARTA site, but all 4 quadrants, and linking those together to create, a nice little node and really community by doing that. The MARTA site specifically, I like the density on the surface lot. There was one image that showed parking in like black rectangles on the south side before you get to the rail yard. Yeah, right there. So I was a little confused when then there's another slide later that says it's car free, and I couldn't tell in the image if there was actually a place for parking, because I do think we have a chance of capturing a decent percentage of the workforce at MARTA to live in this community that would be created, but we also have folks that for various reasons might be driving from 45 minutes outside the city to get here. So I do want to make sure we have that flexibility for those employees who choose to do so. But the overbuild is super interesting, super complex. There are examples all over the country, or really globally, of overbuild situations, and generally you'll see most of them have very high density structures, and that's just a function of trying to make the math work. But as Professor had indicated on the front end, that's not really what this exercise was about. So I like the idea that you advanced of doing the overbuild. I think that's really cool, but overall great job. And lots to think about, but I appreciate you guys, putting your imagination to the paper, and thank you.
Thank you, Jacob.
Thank you.
Thanks.
I'll just jump in and add my 2 cents. This is Will with Microlife. Again, just to reiterate what Jacob spoke to, the connectivity of what you've put forward is great. And I enjoyed you looking into, the connection with the added path as well as the grid style connectivity for that. For the different people that live there that could walk to work or get over to MARTA, and being able to add that extra. And obviously I'm a sucker for anything dog, so I appreciate you really wanting to focus on that dog business and the dog parks, but it also, I think, a big thing for DeKalb County in the area, they do talk about wanting a rec center and places for people to gather. So I was glad that was incorporated. Great job.
Thank you.
And this is Duke from Cul-de-sac. One more brief comment as well. Awesome work, y'all. Something maybe to encourage you to investigate a little bit further is the relationship between Ponce as its kind of current Strode configuration and the buildings that you place on it and the streetscape that you maybe reimagine for it. I think it could be interesting to sort of say, what does this slower street look like? How do the buildings react to that? And just thinking about that relationship a little bit more.
Thanks, Duke. I think that's a great point. Again, we've got a month still to do exactly those kinds of just additional refinement.
Yeah.
What
Hi,
about from the planning department? Okay, who's next?
Hi, it's George. I'm from the Tier 4 at Lantern Ridge. Great job. Really enjoyed the presentation and the possibilities for this zone and area. Love the part about the paths and stuff like that. Taking what we have now and expanding in the path area. Dog park. If you're on Nextdoor, you read a lot about dog parks. So just kind of want to echo the dog park feature. I think it's definitely valuable. Option. So love that idea about the dog park. The only recommendation would be maybe when we're taking a look at the rec center, is kind of we do have the brand new rec center over at the old Toby Grant. So that DeKalb County just put in. So just kind of taking a look at maybe what we have and maybe, incorporating from there what's not in that area to this area, or try to, somehow put them together, because we have a great brand new rec center in Toby Grant, and seeing how we could kind of merge these 2 rec centers together with what we currently have.
Awesome.
Great job.
Great. All right, planning department. Who's gonna jump in? Rachel, James, any?
Yeah, overall, I think it's a really interesting concept. I really like the interconnectivity. Yeah, great work.
All right. If there are any other comments anyone would like to make, please put them in the chat. And we're going to go ahead and move on to team 3, which is right next to this one. I'm really sorry, that Jacob says he had to jump, but we are recording, so we'll get some feedback from the MARTA folks. So go ahead, team 3.
We're good. All right. Our project is, we've titled Planning for the Future, an Electrified MARTA and the Decline of Light Industrial Spaces. I'm Matt.
And I'm Danya.
All right. And then click Danya. yeah, just going into existing conditions, we're going to take a look at, what's kind of on the site, what are the surrounding conditions, and what were our takeaways?
So our site is, we're team 3. So our site is basically adjacent to the Ponce de Leon Road. And we have the DeKalb Farmers Market neighboring us. And we have the Laredo Drive that passes through our site. And we see that our site is predominantly light industrial, and it also houses the Marta's bus depot.
And then looking, zoomed in version of that, can see that MARTA occupies a significant square footage on the site, calculating somewhere around 30%, where light industrial spaces are about 67%. And there is absolutely almost no housing. And there's only about 4 single family houses that sit just south of the MARTA site. So what you're seeing here is, MARTA, the light industrial zone, and then in the dark purple are the building uses that are actually, taking advantage of that light industrial zoning type. Otherwise, these are kind of commercial businesses. And then zooming back out, so just so we can understand the light industrial use type, in terms of DeKalb County, you can see on this map in orange that use type is actually in decline. There's very little space within the county for the light industrial spaces, and what is there is quickly being phased out or pushed to the periphery of the county in the face of urban sprawl.
So this is the map of the existing site. This just shows the existing typology of buildings. As we can see, overall, there's a lack of density on the site, and most light industrial buildings are not being used in the traditional light industrial sense. So also we see that there was no housing on the site except for the ones that Matt had mentioned. We just had 4 or 5 houses, single family towards the south end. So we can see mostly it's commercial, light industrial, and we also found a few storage spaces and warehouses on site.
And to, look at kind of a big stakeholder here, MARTA is currently employing about 755 employees at the Laredo facility, 80% of which are driving alone. And if you look at this map, this heat density map on the top right, you can see that a lot of the employees reside fairly close to the Laredo facility. And about 60 to 75% of those people are eligible to actually carpool, but don't. And about 43% have access to existing transit routes, but do not use it. On top of this, as we had mentioned kind of at the beginning of the presentation, MARTA is aiming to be fully electric by 2040. So looking at the diagram on the bottom right, you can kind of see the route off of which MARTA enters onto their bus depot site from East Ponce de Leon with their buses moving north to south and kind of track down south through the site, go through the wash bay, refuel, and then go into bus parking. And their employees, the employee parking as a surface lot that sits at the northwest corner of the lot. Employee cars are then being brought into the site off of Laredo Drive.
So this is to just show you some of the existing routes that are present on the site. We also have the Stone Mountain Trail crossing our site. And the blue represents the Marta's bus route, and we can see that we have almost no bus routes that pass through our site. And also the existing sidewalks, there are almost none. It seems like there was a lack of sidewalks, and this looked like a pedestrian hostile space.
So moving into our project, we're looking at how things could be here. Danya, okay. So two main issues we're looking at are the future recession diminishment of the light industrial space that we kind of highlighted before, and we're planning for MARTA's electrification by 2040, as well as addressing their needs for their workers' commute and also workforce housing, looking at workforce housing options.
So this is a diagram that shows the existing and a proposed public space framework. As you can see that the one on the left is what's existing, and the one on the right, one of the major changes that we aim to do in this project is to sort of reroute the existing Laredo Drive to sort of match up with the change in the DeKalb Farmers Market entrance that Team 2 would be proposing. And just enhancing this trail and adding more light industrial built fabric in the existing space.
Yep, and just understanding kind of that through an analysis of the walkability, that just by adding, more pedestrian-oriented businesses, that we can increase the walkability score quite significantly. In this version, just adding 3 increased the score from a score of 4 out of 100 to 28 out of 100. And then looking at our master plan, you can see that we're actually keeping this route down into the bus route or drive down into the MARTA site for MARTA's buses, as well as for public vehicles, which we're imagining are going to start sharing a large shared parking garage with controlled access. Another major change that Danya had mentioned is our shifting of Laredo and kind of adding some densification or commercial business storefronts along Laredo to change what the current condition of the road. And then as well, obviously, you can see at the north end of the site, we're adding a smattering of housing and car-free spaces that increases retail, mixed use, and a very diverse typology of buildings. And then to the south, we're keeping our light industrial use types, and we're just going to be expanding onto what already exists on the site. So we're trying to preserve and maybe enhance the existing buildings wherever possible. And then the kind of thing that ties it together is this green loop, which is kind of this pedestrian walking path that goes around the periphery of the site and is already existing.
So towards the north end of the site, we have specific building typologies that we thought would help us in densifying, but also diversifying the kind of buildings that we put. We wanted to put hybrid residential buildings and also commercial liner that are multi-story, so that it's sort of mixed use with offices, retail, and commercial spaces.
And then we've done a quick calculation to see that, obvious conclusion that an increase in density in this area is going to increase energy consumption by some amount. And then, of course, now we're going to be looking at MARTA's electrification by 2040. And we're responding with establishing a district energy system, constructing workforce housing. We're creating live, work, and pedestrian-friendly mixed-use infrastructure. And we're planning for outdoor thermal comfort to kind of reinforce that car-free living.
So as Matt had mentioned that we aim to create a district energy system on site. So we thought how it could work is basically from using the light industrial waste that could be generated, but also looking into the organic food waste that the DeKalb Farmers Market might get into the site to sort of process it, and also to use the existing solar and other energy systems on site to create a cycle that could help in creating this sort of circular energy system for the site.
Yep. And by doing so, we're kind of providing for infrastructure resilience in terms of transit. We're creating a source of sustainable energy. And then we're also thinking that this could be an economic asset for those who are being serviced by the energy that's being generated on the site. So at the right, we're kind of starting to map out where the extents of this like service area, and we would like some feedback as to where people think that should expand to, or if it doesn't need to go somewhere. That would be an area that we would want some feedback on.
So this is to just show how the existing MATA circulation could, and how the cars and buses would come, given that we propose to put a parking garage on top of the existing MATA's bus station, and we sort of want to wrap it with the parking garage. So there's a image that we have towards the right top corner. So this is how we see the circulation of the existing spaces to work in the future, along with the district energy center towards the south. And this also is a diagram to sort of show where we see our car light and car free zones, and also how we have aligned our street network. So there was a wind study done to understand what would enable good wind flow and wind movement into the site, and we sort of coherently did our street networks according to that.
And then just thinking more about energy, this increased intensification, therefore, is going to increase our roof areas and areas that are available for solar energy collection. So here we're kind of estimating what that could possibly be and what that could possibly generate. And then these are some studies that we've done in order to determine, what kind of building materials we should use on the site. Looking at existing, we're looking at existing masonry construction as a building type that's commonly used kind of throughout. And masonry had a very high amount of embodied carbon, and comparatively wood had way less. So we're aiming to explore using engineered wood buildings, which are also becoming just exceedingly popular.
And these are some of the building typologies that we hope to establish towards the north end of our site. And they have the block dimensions to it. So most probably we're looking at 100 by 200 foot block typology of buildings, which are completely mixed. And we are not just looking at one type of building that could be present there. So these are some of the residents that we use.
And then this is a street section looking at East Ponce. So you can see that we're trying to kind of create an activation of a pedestrian sphere using store frontage along East Ponce. And we're creating this zone that ensures a safe and comfortable space that is kind of separated from vehicular traffic using trees and greenery.
So this is just to emphasize on the Laredo Drive again. So as you can see, there are smaller parcels that we have shown here. So this is to sort of establish a sort of densification along Laredo. So we wanted to make it more pedestrian oriented, as well as pedestrian oriented businesses to be present there, so that there is some kind of interaction between the businesses and people who are walking by. So we wanted to keep the scale smaller. So looking at these liner retail type of buildings along this edge.
And so our biggest concerns there are kind of the high-speed traffic. It's being treated mostly as just a through street to East Ponce. It's not safe or pleasant for pedestrians, and the front setbacks, according to the zoning code, have to be a 60-foot minimum. And we see that there's an opportunity to kind of close those setbacks by adding those storefronts and kind of reinforcing this idea that the traffic should be slowed and that this is a more pedestrian oriented space. So that's why we're also kind of looking at dismantling the Laredo straightaway as it exists, accounting for those liner buildings. And we're just kind of redesigning the Laredo street infrastructure to be less of this this road and more of a street.
So these are some of the smaller scale businesses that I previously discussed along the Laredo Drive. So we wanted to enhance it as a street rather than just a roadway. So these are the liner retail buildings that we're looking.
Yep, and once again, here we have a street section along Laredo. It's showing the pedestrian zone buffered from the vehicular traffic using trees and greenery, and it's just becoming more of an activated street rather than a roadway.
So this is to show the industrial zone in our site. So we wanted to retain the industrial fabric that's existing, but also use this type and expand the existing green spaces wherever possible. So we are sort of still working out the details on how the traffic flow would be there, but our aim for the space is to retain the existing light industrial buildings.
Yep, and the issues that we're not going to look at in those light industrial spaces are kind of the zoning requirements that have kind of disallowed for densification of the traditional light industrial space. There's really no place for pedestrians. The impermeable paving is kind of pancaked the site and ostracized all of the nature to the periphery. The lack of density implicates a lack of energy efficiency, which we kind of showed before. And the light industrial space is kind of at risk, as we've continued to say. So yeah, we're going to try to keep the light industrial space present. We're going to try to bring in the green spaces, the pedestrian sphere. We're going to allow for existing parcels to be divided. And we're going to incentivize this sort of densification to existing light industrial buildings.
Hey, you guys, your time is up, so please wrap up.
Okay. Yep. And then this was just an evaluation of things at the existing buildings on the site, according to maintenance and aesthetics. And then this is looking at energy flows coming from the residential zones to the south and the DeKalb Farmers Market from the north, as well as biomass being generated out of the light industrial businesses in the light to the west side. All of that coming to the district energy system, which then will redistribute that energy to the MARTA bus depot, as well as to the residents and businesses surrounding.
This is again a diagram to show the different kind of resources that we'll be using for supplemental energy production on our site. In the district energy center.
Sorry, but you guys got to finish up.
And this is just again to show the circular diagram of the waste and what's happening on site.
Yep, and this is a section behind those existing buildings showing an activation of a pedestrian space and the green trail that kind of exists already.
Okay, that's it. All right. Thank you very much. Sorry to rush you guys, but I do want to leave time for folks to have some comments. Unfortunately, we've lost Jacob to talk more about the MARTA site, but we'll talk to MARTA. We'll arrange another time to get some input on that. Who else would like to comment?
I enjoyed the creativity of even just Matthew, what you said, and quote me, please help me if I misquote you, but you said that want to make it a road, not a street, or a street, not a road. Which one was it? Basically making it a street, not a road. And so just making that experience and you know, even just that with that soft turn allows people to slow down and really see what's there. And I just appreciated that experience, even if it is in a car, driving through, and they're there to be able to see and connect with what you've designed. And so, and of course, really loved incorporating the trails and the connectivity, and also making sure that people know that there's a loop. You know, for some reason, we in Atlanta love to walk in big circles, so that was really great.
I'll jump in next if that's all right. So I think it's great that you identify one of our big issues in DeKalb, which is this decrease in light industrial and this transition as a a lot of those land uses are being either turned into residential or being pushed out to the margins. So I love the idea of densifying this and getting more of those mixed uses. It is an ongoing issue that we have in terms of what do you do with this light industrial, because lots of people have different perceptions about exactly what light industrial is. But if it's maker spaces or small workshops, then that's a very different perception necessarily than some kind of something that causes more dust, dirt, noise, or pollution, right? Those are the things that we're always looking out for. So I think that this is a cool plan, and you've definitely identified some of our ongoing issues too. So good work.
Thank you. And I can hop in here as well. I really appreciate your instinct to sort of address the existing conditions in terms of the old rail bed and turning that into a trail. The existing buildings, definitely think it's a good instinct to keep existing buildings and light industrial uses because they tend to have lower rents, which make a greater variety of uses a little bit more available. And I also really like the intervention with Laredo and would maybe encourage you to take that a little bit further. I think the existing street frontage, it sort of creates a C in the southwestern portion of the plan. Like that may be a vestige of the frontage of those buildings and kind of the existing street grid that you could reorient and create a little bit more dramatic shift. And maybe that's a stronger yield in terms of the footprint or other things, but just would encourage you to investigate that a little more.
That's a really interesting comment, Duke, to think about if Laredo actually really became part of the Ryokan Circle, sort of, and then came out, or is that what you're suggesting?
Potentially, yeah, or that circle is removed entirely and turned into a grid space, and then that creates opportunities for the buildings that front the green then have like a maybe nonlinear relationship to the street grid that gets placed in between, and like, yeah, I think the circle exists, and it's interesting to look at it existing, and then also look at what happens when you kind of blow it up and change that street grid and frontage.
Okay.
So is there anyone here who can comment on the district energy system? To me, that's one of the more really innovative ideas here. Is that something that has DeKalb County has desires or have fears of that kind of introducing a smaller scale power plant?
So I guess from a zoning perspective, I think it sounds like a really cool idea and very innovative. But I guess I don't know enough to comment more specifically than that. But yeah, cool idea.
There are some precedents that we can show, I think, to make it maybe a little bit more understand. Again, we're not experts in designing what a district energy, what the actual power plant would look like, but they are being integrated into mixed use neighborhoods. So I'm assuming someone else knows how to deal with the smell and noise and issues and things. And the idea that MARTA is going electric also really adds, much quieter. I mean, it helps that make the bus depot a better neighbor to live next to, I think, once they have an electrified fleet. So that becomes
I have a general question. Yeah. Sorry, can you hear me?
Yeah. Hi.
Okay.
Hi, James.
Yeah. So are these proposals meant to be like one? Is the idea that these proposals would be like one mega project done in collaboration between like the private developer and the county, or would it be like, could it be broken down between the public and the private? Because that kind of context matters, like in terms of like how these things work.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really important question because there are so many different property owners right now, although not as many as you might think. And so the degree, you know, with MARTA as such a big property owner, we're sort of, I'm speaking for the students saying it, we're assuming they take the lead, but on some of the parcels along Ponce and how that would really be, whether that would require, you know, most likely it would mean someone's going to come in and be a master developer of that much in one place, but it wouldn't have to. So I'll work with the students to try to see, you know, to look into that in more detail.
Would it be possible to like break off the public realm suggestions as like a separate like mini set so that could be used and get if like the private stuff wouldn't work out?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's often that things like moving roads and making them into streets absolutely should be a public sector job.
Mhm.
And I think so often, as we've seen throughout Metro Atlanta, once the public sector makes those changes, then that attracts the developers who are also interested in providing more sustainable kinds of patterns of development. But if you have any suggestions about how to improve what inevitably, I'm sure it would be a public-private partnership, but if you have suggestions on how the students' designs could make that implementation even easier, that would be, or more clear, please speak up.
I mean, I don't know, it might be helpful to like show a diagram of what space is public and what is currently private in the presentation, because if you don't know that beforehand, it sort of looks like just like one big master project when that's usually how it works, unless you get lucky.
Great point. Absolutely.
It's like different suggestions might have different levels of feasibility. If you like group it all together into one, that might give the impression it's like all or nothing, when you can make incremental. Some of the suggestions could be like incremental improvements you can make, even if you can't do most of your suggestions.
Which I think they absolutely could. Yeah. Any other comments? All right, we're going to move on to team 1.
Oh, 1 second. Good afternoon, everyone. Oh, sorry.
Okay. We see Akanksha's screen, but yeah, not the presentation.
You see the presentation?
No, we see, I think we see
I'm
everywhere
sorry.
you've logged into for the
Okay, give me a second. I'm sorry.
It's okay. Patricia, do you want to just start describing where your site is?
Absolutely. So we're a team of 3. There's going to be 2 of us speaking with you. Our HPBL student is not with us. I'm Patricia and my partner is Akanksha. Our zone is zone 1. It is the most northern section of the area that we're looking at. And it's really in the heart, the very center of Scottdale in general, adjacent to a little sliver of Clarksdale. Akanksha, you okay?
Yeah, I don't know why it's acting up at the right time. Just give me a second, please.
Should we?
I'm just gonna share.
Akanksha, would you like us to? We can switch to team 2 and come back. Give you time to figure it out.
Did you?
No, you got it. Yeah.
Awesome.
Okay, cool.
Okay.
Okay, sorry. I'm Akanksha, and we are, as Patricia said, the map. Go ahead, Patricia.
All right, I think we can move on.
Yeah. Is
Perfect.
it now moving the screen?
Yes, perfect. Okay, so this is where we're at. That big road that you see kind of in the upper quadrant third is North Decatur, and it is followed by intersected with East Ponce to the east side. We have three main drivers to our project. We felt that in our site visit, we went and we met a bunch of you and many of the residents, and what we were really told to do was to forage around for a town center. The responsibility that we heard was that we still needed to honor very much the artistic community that we saw within that neighborhood and also support self-sufficiency. We had done studies of what was available, and of all of the amenities within all of Scottdale, what came forward was not surprisingly maybe, was a strong emphasis on the arts. So 11% of all the amenities in this fairly small community is all arts related. Our zone is the most residential, and it's not very dense. When we did a study of walkability, it had a score of 45 out of 100. Our aim is to get it closer to 100. We did some environmental analysis on wind and on solar. So we're showing you the wind first of where it comes in during the summertime, which is the southwest, and where it comes in in the wintertime, which is the northwest and the southeast. The wind, fortunately, is not so strong here in Atlanta to cause major design interventions, but it is something that cool breeze in those hot Atlanta days is fantastic. The solar analysis is probably the more significant one. So we really need to be concentrating on shading due to the intense sun, both in summer and winter, that affects this area and all of the city. The other analysis that we did was really on topography. So the yellow highlighted line there is North Decatur. As you can see from the line below, it's not a flat line. There's a 40-foot grade between the high point and the low point. When we went on our site visit, the intersection of North Decatur and East Ponce was where the community said we really needed to put the town center. However, that is the low point of that line. And so it would be a hike to get to anything that was available at the high point. So you're going to see shortly that we're proposing actually that town center being shifted a little bit west, an intersection that is street accessible.
Okay, so based on the analysis and the drivers, these are the outcomes we would like to produce that will result from our proposal. So to say, the design strategies would be to slow down traffic, create more mobility hubs, increase walkability, have more micro businesses engage in the area, resiliency hub, and definitely open the public access to the creek. So our master plan is mostly divided into 3 incremental phases. This is the Mill Village, definitely the storage area, the southern side of North Decatur, or one part of our town center, and the super block that is above. So our proposal would like to introduce new car streets and pedestrian streets. And the yellow is the residences over here, and the red is trying to show the commercial or the retail spaces. So increase in amenities in the location. The amenities here would definitely be smaller shops, more artistic stores, coffee shops, very contrast to the farmers market that's more monumental in scale. And then the residences, which Patricia will explain.
Yeah, I don't know if you can see your mouse, Akansha, but north of North Decatur Road, where it shows yellow, that would be mixed use with residents, or sorry, commercial space on the first floor and then residents on the second and third floor. Our idea, we heard from the community that we don't necessarily want it to be more dense, but we also saw and got to witness community members that were incredibly generous in opening up of themselves, of their homes. So we want to be intentional about building more density, but in a way that forms greater community and allows the people that are already there that have such generous spirits to be mentors, to leave legacy, to share their skills and gifts. We also want to add more civic buildings. So currently there's Montessori school. The pink buildings are the proposed increase in civic buildings. There's a post office, there is a Montessori school and a theater. Currently there's a commercial space that we've put in pink. It's a storage unit owned by the owner of DeKalb Farmers Market that we want to create into a mixed use space, one of some commercial uses, but also a future resiliency hub, which I'll discuss in a slide or two.
Also, we would like to have more pause points or nodes at intersections of streets that would probably enhance the experience for a person walking along the street. That would also open up more open spaces towards the creek, an OAT or an open air theater, so to say. A playscape that is on the super block and incorporating more patios.
So one of the main things that we need to do is that North Decatur Road is an intense place to drive and let alone walk. As you can see from the picture on the left, is to do a road diet along the area that we're trying to build out as the main street. The picture on the right is one of those proposals, and the section down below is how we would use the existing street and reduce it down to on-street parking, bike lanes, and the eastward and westward bound direction. The current residents, when we did analysis of land parcel studies, we found that 75% of the parcels in this area are owned by LLCs. Only 25% are owned by individual citizens. That's indicated by the reddish tones and the yellow tones in this image. As I mentioned, we got to meet 3 individuals who immediately opened up their homes to us. The common threads amongst them, aside from their craft making skills of sculpture, of greenhouses, of entrepreneurship, was this artistic vein amongst them. So that's really a precedent and a priority for us moving forward.
Okay. So as Patricia already talked about slowing down traffic, we believe that North Decatur Road needs to have the town center. We have shifted the town center to be at this intersection from the Francis Street and the North Decatur Road, only because it is on a higher ground and it is easier for the pedestrians to access the street. The North Decatur Road over here is more car-oriented, but the Francis Street is going towards car light and car-free zones. We are also trying to incorporate an art corridor, so to say, from the intersection that would probably enhance the experience while walking down the commercial corridor.
Francis Street will be partly car-oriented and partly pedestrian-oriented. So we just wanted to give a graphic of what sections we're trying to propose to make more car-free, car-oriented, and car-light, because the density currently is not as great. To do and support that, we need mobility hubs that would make a transit-rich experience. So the squares or the rectangles in orange would be where we would propose that. Some precedents on the right show what gets included in mobility hubs for people to have greater access. In addition to that, I mentioned that there was this pink building that's a storage building that we wanted to turn into a storage unit for self-sufficiency, for unfortunately climate crises. However, climate crises we hope will never be something that's regular. So we also want to make it a mixed use space that would have commercial spaces and that would have daily use. But these are some of the things that are included in a resiliency hubs, cisterns, community gardens, a laundromat that is accessible because of PV panels. So self-sufficient in that way.
So the vision for our super block that's towards the north of the North Decatur Road is to have a little oasis of residences, commercial, small businesses because people are already walking. So when we went there and we were driving around, we saw a lot of people already walking there, and we thought that would kind of create this kind of intimate space that we're trying to design here with more courtyards. Like you can see in the section, we're trying to bring in more people in smaller streets, experience the space. Overlapping this with the environmental analysis, I think we believe that our design is trying to incorporate wind analysis and solar with proper shading, and create a thermal comfort for someone who's walking down these streets.
The last slide that we want to show you is where the mill is. So this section of the mill has never had residents on it because traditionally it was the entire factory. The entire mill took up the space, as you can see from that middle image on the right. Up until 1993, it was nearly double the size. So now that half of it is gone, it's, I think, a wonderful opportunity to kind of transition from the traditional mill village that's just south of that single family homes, into a more urban landscape from south to north, and densify it so that if we were to retrofit the mill similar to Studioplex in Atlanta with commercial space, that there would be residents already there that could help support that business and come in from the DeKalb Farmers Market's visitors that's just east of the mill. We're going to return to our master plan. We look forward to any feedback, questions, and comments from all of you.
All right. Who would like to jump in? I think, Duke from Cul-de-sac, you probably recognized a couple of images there from the super block. Do you want to make a comment?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. Love to see those. And yeah, I think really appreciate your attention to edges and streetscapes and sort of the relationship between the larger streets, smaller streets, that hierarchy, and then also the diversity of housing types that you're offering both on the north side of Decatur and then also in the Mill District. I definitely want to call attention to the lower density areas on site and hope to encourage you to be thoughtful about ways to either offer the community things like community land trust or other opportunities to protect their land basis and keep them in place, or a strategy that either is subdividing their lots and creating new density that way, or maybe something that's a little bit more collaborative and participatory with them to bring density, because the reality is if the rest of this area becomes very nice and people get pushed out because of their property taxes, then they're pushed out. And so while they may not necessarily want density, that providing creative opportunities to say, you may not want density, but here's a way to deliver density that benefits you, allows you to stay in place, and it's an option, choose from these options. I think that could be a great way to advance the project. But really great work.
Who else? Thank you, dude.
I'll go. I thought it was great to, and DeKalb County has been focused on city center areas. And so you calling out and saying, instead of being at the base of North Decatur meeting East Ponce, why not move it to the top of the hill? And I thought that was really on point. Again, just thinking of the pedestrian and the experience, as well as, really making that connected and road diet. I always love a good road diet to make sure we're actually caring for our citizens so no one is injured, but also can get from A to B. I did enjoy also just speaking to the arts district, and also I applaud you for visiting and talking with the neighbors and really letting them give you ideas. I kind of, with all of the different aspects, I really appreciate too showing a vision for the mill and how it can be supported, because sometimes people can't see what it could be versus what it is. So thank you.
Yeah, I think that was a good point. I'll second that point, Will. Because that's really, is that the crest of the hill, or is it a little bit further up? Is it
I think it's just a little bit further up, Ted. So just a little bit, just past the, I believe that big box storage facility.
Yeah,
where it is.
Yeah, and you know, the view, you can see the Atlanta skyline from that hill, and makes you think like if you were on top of a building, a rooftop, how the views would be as well. So I think that's an important point. I really do like the super block system, just the concepts. I've been to Barcelona, and I think that's like where we got to go just as a society. So I think those are really good features. And then, yeah, I definitely agree with what Duke was saying, because I think that Scottdale is already experiencing that kind of gentrification and potential development that could push out legacy residents. And so I think we've got to be really on point, like me, as in me, to create some of those safeguards, like you said, with the community land trust or you know, through the land bank. So that's something that we're definitely interested in. I do know that North Decatur Road, we did get it on the scoping study list for to look at a road diet or other configurations that would make it more pedestrian friendly and, you know, basically connect into the Stone Mountain Trail. So I think you're on point with North Decatur Road, getting whether it's a road diet or just really expanding the right of way for pedestrians, I think is definitely on our list of things to do. Thank you.
Thank you. Who else?
Hey again. Yeah, I think great work on the project. I think the town center concept is really interesting and very inviting. I think that you definitely want to be considerate of the Mill Village, and it might be appropriate to think about some kind of design standards or other kinds of applications for that surrounding new development. That's something that we've tried to implement in Scottdale with mixed results. But I think the Mill Village is definitely one of the more historic locations in the county as a whole. So just something else to think about. But yeah, great work.
Akansha and Patricia, what do you have questions about? What would you, is there anything in particular? You didn't actually talk about your amphitheater. Do you want to, anything else that you want some feedback on?
On Monday, just so that we're transparent with all of you, we had another review with there was a city planner from Scottdale and a lot of academics and
Larry
architects.
Washington was here, was with us from the city planning. Yeah.
And their feedback, I think we're still milling on quite a bit of what they said. So parts of questions that I had asked them was really, all right, we definitely want to slow down the traffic. We want to bring more attention to this like kind of new main street where the town center will be. But how would that be enough to get people to Stone Mountain, right? If North Decatur Road and Ponce, like what I'm calling the seven on North Decatur and then south on East Ponce, would that slowing down of traffic be enough of an intervention to get people across the railroad to Stone Mountain? Or if there's something more that you all think that we could add to make that connection more solid. The second thing were two big green spaces. Akansha, I don't know if you want to talk about that, but the amphitheater closer to the creek that could help people move across to the DeKalb Farmers Market, even by walking. The topography there is not easy, but there's already a road, a gravel road that could be accessible and kind of shortcut you into the parking lot of the farmers market, which would be so accessible rather than going all the way around East Ponce. It needs to be closer to the water so that it can also serve the function of kind of picking up stormwater if the creek expands. And then north of North Decatur Road, that green space on the image we thought of as a playscape. So on Monday, I shared children are incredible influencers for disposable income, right? If folks go shopping in that like region that we're building out, oftentimes it can be an incentive. Motivation can be to go there because it's got the playscape at the end, like, all right, you're gonna behave right in these stores, and then we'll go play in that playground. And it be protected by the mixed use on the corner, holding the edge, so it's still safe, but this beautiful, it's got great topography for slides and for like a natural earthy playscape that also is in line with the vibe that the residents often are already displaying in that area.
So actually, we've got one more minute. Just your actual question, what you want the help on is sort of what other activities to continue to try to think about for your town center, or what exactly?
Either that, or if there's any other intervention that they can see that would bring us all the way to Stone Mountain and make that connection to that trail.
Yes,
Well, I guess
George.
the trail really goes. I don't know if I can touch. I can't draw on the screen, but right at the Mill Village, that railroad crossing, that little where Clarendon hits Ponce. That's the trail basically right there. So I think like going under the tracks is the difficulty because there's only so much room under that overpass. But just right there at that little Clarendon and Ponce, where that hits the Mill Village, that's it's just a train crossing at grade.
And I think just looking at it, I think another value to get to the path would be right there at North Decatur and Ponce. As you noted, it's a very busy intersection. Then you have the tracks above. Some way, if we're going to put the town center at the top, to try to connect to that path to the town center is, looking at that intersection and trying to look at the walkability on, getting to the path on the other side of the tracks, across Ponce to the other side, North Decatur. I think that is going to be trying to connect that and looking at that intersection to the path, I think is real valuable when you're looking at the town center at the top of the hill.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Team 1. All right, we have our last team, and it's a big one, the farmers market site. So Team 2.
Hi, everyone. Give me just 1 second to share my screen. Okay, can everybody see this?
Yes.
Okay, well, welcome everybody. We are very excited to speak with you today. So the site that my team and I are working on is the DeKalb Farmers Market property. I'm sure you guys are all familiar with this site. It is a 140,000 square foot market and warehouse. It is both a local destination for the citizens of Scottdale, but it's also a regional destination pulling people from all over North Georgia. So this is a really important site. Overall, as you all know, it's a very limited access site. The main access is coming from Ponce de Leon because it's surrounded by, which was great to learn at the earlier stakeholder meetings. It's called the Great Wall of Scottdale, and that is extremely apt. And so what we're focused on is really increasing north-south connections and east-west connections, and also working to fit in the vision of the owner of the property, Mr. Blazer. So as I said earlier, he has over 140,000 square feet of retail and warehouse, and it also currently has over 700 parking spaces. What Mr. Blazer is proposing is close to 1 million square feet of additional retail and warehouse and over 3,500 total parking spaces. This represents a very traditional mode of development with warehouse and surface parking. And we believe that there's a great opportunity to redefine and refine this vision. So Mr. Blazer stated, my stand is for life to work free of scarcity and suffering for future generations. So with that in mind, we want to vision an enhanced DeKalb farmers market that reflects the owner's philosophy of connecting people and food. And we see that there are three major steps to achieving this vision. The first is to unlock the development potential of the site. The second is to enhance mobility. And the third is to incorporate green and eco-conscious design. This is the proposed master plan. This is just an overall look at what we are proposing. It includes retaining the existing and proposed farmers market buildings and connecting the existing and proposed farmers market buildings with a large green space. And then again, enhancing the north and south connections and the east and west connections through the site. We're also proposing a car-free zone. This would be a car-free neighborhood scale development. And we have three different districts. So the car-dependent districts are the ones serving the farmers market. Obviously this is a regional draw that people are driving to, so we're definitely maintaining parking for those areas. But then with the rest of the site going car light or car-free. This is our proposed parking plan for the property. If you deck that parking, that 33,000 parking space surface parking lot, you can open up between the two farmers markets over 30 acres of development. Again, for new neighborhood and new retail and office and commercial space. And so that is part of unlocking the development potential of the site. And then there are also three different typologies that we're proposing. Again, the warehouse and commercial for the farmers market, mixed use buildings, and then smaller scale residential properties. Those smaller scale residential properties are what's called missing middle. So, typically 2 to 3 stories, and they would be sort of low rise but higher density than your typical single family home. And these are multiplex types of housing. And I've pulled examples from, across the Atlanta region. So all of these photos are pictures from, right here in Atlanta. So on the left is a duplex, on the right is a multiplex with 4 to 6 units. And then these are some larger multiplex typologies with up to 12 units on the left, and then a courtyard typology on the right. And then our mixed use types, which have, ground floor, commercial, office, retail, and then upper floor living spaces. And then this is our proposed street.
Anu.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
It's Anu, right?
Okay. So, like Madeline explained, the connections that we are extending to north, south, and east, west. So here we are here we are proposing four types of routes. The car in the red, and in yellow it's like service route for trucks for the farmers market warehouse, and then we have streets that are far accessible, pedestrian streets, and they are like 30 to 40 feet wide. And then we have pedestrian streets that we can talk in later. The next slide. And then the grid in the purple, the purple streets, which are far accessible streets, pedestrian streets, they are so they are in a grid, like we can see here, they are in a grid. So this we wanted to create a different
we wanted to bring a different variation within the grid. So we played with the building typology and orientations. And regarding orientations, we did simulations on solar and did solar analysis. Based on that, we found out that the linear orientation works best for the climate. So we try to incorporate that typology as much as possible in our planning. And then we are also we are creating a variation, like we are breaking down the linear streets with alleys, and that we can see here in the pedestrian alley in the red. So we are creating the irregular pedestrian movement within the blocks that the grids are creating. So in that way, we are also addressing climate resilient design through trees and canopies and making more walkable. Next slide. So when we look into the open space framework, the main green open space is in the central, and then we have like pocket of green spaces throughout our sites, like as visible in the diagram itself, and they are vary in the scale. Next slide. So here we the green spaces are public, semi-public, and private. The public are the main the central plaza and the streets are the public, while the private are the private courtyards that are incorporated in our housing typologies, and there are also semi-public spaces in different parts of the site. Next. The section in the top, the diagram in the top is the section through our senior housing and the stormwater retention pond. There we can see that the greenery not just in the ground, but it also connects in the building. It also merges in the building itself. And like I said, like the buildings orientations, they are climate resilient and to enable more sunlight and more shading through the green trees and trees canopies. And in the diagrams and the lower in the left, we can find like so these diagrams in the left is the one that is not it's not car accessible, while in the right bottom right it's accessible sometimes for emergency. So we have like different types of pocket green spaces within our site that creates a unique public vista, and also like create a climate resilient design with narrow alleys and tree canopies and courtyards. Next slide. So this is the overall master plan view. Like we can see how the massing is done and how we are incorporating different functions like residential, retails, restaurants, warehouse, parking, farmers market, greenhouse, and offices in our site. Next slide. Yeah, so when we look, when we got this, look through the section, got the our site from north to south, like north from the left, that is north from Bond Street, to right north, that is stormwater retention. We are creating like on the edges where there is car accessible, it's more like commercial, while in the central it's like missing middle neighborhood, like what Madeline explained. And in the central is the center plaza, and then the density is higher in the edges, while it's lower in the central. And then we are incorporating senior housing along towards the north. So there we can see different public and private spaces in the courtyards. Green courtyards in the form of green courtyards. Next. This is the another master view, 3D view. Next. So this is the section through east and west. That is, in the east there is a warehouse that is existing farmers market, and then in the west there is the cliff that we talked before. And then so in the east and west there is a farmers market. Then while in the middle there is a missing middle neighborhood. So so the density here we see that along the streets there is high density, like four-story buildings, while in the right side it's missing middle, it's around two-story buildings. Next. So so we are targeting for our performance analysis. So we are looking into solar analysis and renewable energy, and then rainwater harvesting, and walkability and bikeability. Next.
Okay, so one of the ways that we are achieving a more walkable and bikeable Scottdale is by increasing the connectivity, not just for cars, but for public transit and for pedestrians and cyclists. Currently, there is no, really pedestrian facilities on the farmers market site. So all of our street sections are incorporating wide sidewalks and lots of trees and greenery. This would be a street section through the car-free streets in our new neighborhood. And as you can see, it's a wide walking path with planting areas. And then here, one really important thing about the farmers market is they would need significant, service lanes for large trucks to use constantly. So the lanes on these streets are a little bit wider. And this is an example of a section from the northern part of the site. And again, incorporating those walking paths in those planting areas to make it, a better experience for pedestrians than what's there now. And then this is the street section from Ponce de Leon. So Ponce de Leon is a really important street for connecting not only this site, but all of Scottdale. It's the one that this property has the easiest access from. And so again, we're prioritizing wide walking paths along Ponce de Leon and grade separated bike paths. Just because Ponce de Leon is a state-owned road and it has very fast traffic, so separated facilities would be necessary in this case. And again, planting trees, providing shade to those people walking and biking.
So once we have this network of pedestrian spaces and avenues and streets, we wanted to evaluate it. And what we did is we did an analysis that evaluated how connected it is and how integrated it is. And by looking at this, we realized that we have a very strong north-south connection that a lot of people and users in this space would use. But at the same time, you would have a series of smaller streets in the walkable neighborhood that would create a sense of privacy and really emphasize that community and closeness that people have inside that neighborhood. And if go next, please. And if you compare this to how we see it, it definitely reads as a North Avenue that connects, as a North-South Avenue that is mostly for letting people into the neighborhood. And then once you go into these smaller streets, you can disseminate and walk into the different housing typologies that we have.
And you guys are just out of time, so you're gonna have to speed it up
Right.
a little bit, Miguel.
So at the center of this community, you would have a mobility hub that would be the extension of, we have the extension of a bus route, route 120. And at the mobility hub, you would have a series of spaces that would let people wait while they go to the farmer's market or they walk around the site. And essentially, the mobility hub would be the genesis of a plaza that we wanted to incorporate. Can you go next? That will have a series of restaurants and amenity spaces that expand into this plaza. And at the plaza itself, you would program it to have different activities and really bring it to life. And you would have essentially this view of the plaza that has just different opportunities for people to come and gather and play and interact with each other. And this is, yeah, go ahead.
So we are proposing a food energy water nexus ecosystem in our design. Next. So we are doing like we are proposing photovoltaic cells and rainwater harvesting on the roof. Next. So these are the basic calculations we did. We are having like 276% on renewable energy. Next. So when we look into the site and look into the timeline of what went change in topography and greenery, that will have an adverse effect in the natural ecosystem and give rise to unforeseen future problems like storm water runoff, flooding, etc. Next. So realizing how important is importance of the ecology, the ecosystem, green ecosystem. So we want to retain it, and we want the greenery to as much as in our site, and then continue to the walking trail on the other sites, zone 4, zone 3, and zone 1. So we are providing green amenity to the car-free and car-light neighborhood, and we are increasing groundwater infiltration and biodiversity. Next. So we are creating a eco food community, and we are proposing agri landscape as a bridge between community and food, and we want to give back to the community with low maintenance planting in the form of agri landscape, and it will be a model for eco food community. And we are also proposing trees that reduce the carbon and improve the air quality and health and greenery. Next. So we are proposing greenhouse above the proposed farmers market. Next. And also we are daylighting the train and creating an ecological network of water bodies through stormwater management pond, bioswale, pervious ground cover, and French drains. Next. So we are proposing stormwater retention that will also help in filtration and reducing CO and helps in CO2 absorption. So we are proposing agri landscape, low maintenance CO2 absorption, reed bed of and seaweed, and also adding natural boardwalk as an amenity around the stormwater retention pond. Next. So about rainwater harvesting, so we are doing it in the neighborhood area, and this is the basic calculation that we are getting. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Thank you. Comments?
I think we should take this to Mr. Blazer right away.
I really agree. I mean, actually, Commissioner Terry, we don't know how to reach them. So if someone wants to introduce us, please do.
Is Kathleen on the call? All right.
No, she could not make it today. She's going to watch the video.
Okay, Kathleen, if you're watching this later, well, we just need to circle back with Kathleen and just we just need to ask her to help facilitate that.
Commissioner Bradshaw also said that he seemed to he seemed to indicate he could introduce us.
Great. Is Alicia on?
I am.
Alicia, can you help make a connection?
We'll do our best. I know that he met him some time ago, but yeah, I'll follow up with Commissioner Bradshaw.
Okay, great, thank you. Yeah, just I wanted to say I think the better use of the parking area I thought was the best part. Absolutely, I think that everyone's in that mindset here. And then
could you all go back to the master plan, please?
Yes, thank you. Yeah. And so the question I had for I guess the parking area. So in essence, it would be I think I missed that part. So it'd be in essence like a deck, and then the plaza will be on top of the deck.
So the parking deck would be on the southern end of the new farmers market. That's our current plan.
Gotcha. Okay. And then what is this? What is the other little gray strip there?
So this is a building typology. This is sort of a very rudimentary section showing, but you would have a little bit of retail or office, some sort of mixed use, and then upper floor residential, and that would cantilever over just some surface parking that would mostly service this retail right here.
Gotcha. Okay. Great. Thank you.
I thought the plaza connecting the two was wonderful, and also kind of sectioning out like which area does, is it retail, restaurants, gather. Enjoyed seeing that thought put into this, as well as just, the being able to show that we can create a great density that could walk out their front door, and Ellen, you could go get your cup of coffee at the farmer's market. So that would be amazing. So Alicia, looks like Alicia's got her coffee. So I'll throw it over to Alicia if she wants to say anything.
Actually drinking lemon water. No, it was very, very good. I like it. I have a question regarding the what was it? I just lost my train of thought. Above the farmer's market, you were suggesting to put a nursery up there. Is that right?
Greenhouse.
A greenhouse.
is a nursery. Yeah.
A greenhouse.
So,
Now, is the idea that that would be open to the public? How would that function?
So we are proposing greenhouse that will be open to public. So if I want to go and buy something in farmers market, I can actually see how it's grown, like the vegetables, and it's more public. So we want to give that experience to the people. So the farmers market now, we want Mr. Blazer to give a wide horizon of what farmers market could be, like his business could be, and yeah.
Yeah, additionally, sorry.
Are you assuming, I sort of assumed that from the team that still it's to grow vegetables that Mr. Blazer sells. It might be accessible to view or visit, but not, okay.
Yeah,
but also
it is owned by the Mr. Blazer. It's not like public can just have it. It's not. It's only for viewing purpose.
Great, thank you. And that was my follow-up question. And so with that, and I don't want to get all into the details about it, with that, it could also serve as a teaching opportunity because I know they already have schools that come in and visit with the farmers market, but it could also be an opportunity for educational purposes as well. Is that your thinking?
Yeah, so exactly, when we were researching the property, we saw that they already sort of offer tours that you can like schedule with them. So we were envisioning this as an extension of that.
Okay. And I recently was at the farmers market. Do you know what the actual distance is? I do like the center. I like that very much with the different activities and housing. Do you know what the walking difference is between the current building and what the proposed new building is?
So the plaza length is about 800 feet, and then total it's about 902,000 feet for the difference between these two.
All right, that's all I have. Thank you.
I had a question from just connecting to the previous site. So the north section here, that would is that road that would connect to our new town center?
So the road that would connect to the new town center would be, sorry, I'm going to scroll through, would be this, would be this road. This would connect to the town center. You can see in the bottom of the screen, there's a star marking the location. So this would be north-south connection. And then you would also
do the street typologies.
Yeah, go to the street typologies.
Street networks
diagram.
in plan. Yeah, this one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the bus, why don't you describe the Route 120 bus, what you're proposing?
Okay, so Madeline, you might want to show through the cursor, like which goes where.
Yes, so the 120
Oh,
bus
yeah.
currently runs along Ponce, but we would propose that the bus would get rerouted through our site and then connect north to North Decatur Road, which is also Site 1, so that the 120 bus could service more easily the farmers market by providing a direct access to it. And then also providing more connectivity along the redevelopment for Site 1. And then it would just connect back up to its typical route.
Okay. Okay, that makes sense. I like that. And then, I mean, in terms of just because we've been talking about like micro mobility and sort of entertaining the idea of even a more sort of micro transit network. Is there anything about this that could be sort of adapted to an autonomous micro transit system? Is it basically the same infrastructure and bones, or would you design this grid differently and this one and connecting it to the other sites?
Yeah, Ted, I think that's a great question, Commissioner Terry. It's a great question. It's not something we've really discussed at length, although we have. Courtney Sung is on the call, and we have discussed with VIA that really whether there's a driver or not a driver doesn't actually change much. It changes the operational costs significantly, but the way that AV vans are already operating in some places, it doesn't change much. There's a little more infrastructure to make sure you've got really good connectivity so that the AVs don't suddenly stop.
Gotcha. And so I guess in
Courtney, do you want to elaborate on that? Courtney, did I say?
Yeah,
did I
think
misstate?
that's no, I think that's right. Can you all hear me okay? I think, Commissioner Terry, great question. We talked mostly about how potentially offering microtransit throughout the 4 sites overall and connecting potentially to Clarkson and a couple other key locations in DeKalb County could enable a reduction in parking, whether that's structured or surface parking in general. I think in terms of street design, we typically use 6-passenger vans, so it doesn't require as much width as maybe a full bus or a truck. So that's something that team could consider is like you don't need as wide of streets maybe, but it's still like a regular vehicle. For the autonomous part, I'm very anti-autonomous circulators because I think circulators tend to just take longer and not actually get people where they want to go. And what I understand from the current autonomous vehicles is like they all have like speed limits in terms of how fast they can go and what types of streets they can operate on. So it might actually, in fact, like limit the opportunities that we could do here versus just a regular sort of on-demand transit / fixed route transit network. But I think it's a great point for the team to consider.
Yeah. Okay. Well, then I think with that in mind, then does it make sense to? I mean, I guess in essence, they're just drop-off points, really. So
yeah, exactly.
As we design the sites,
really,
it's almost like every commercial sort of node or housing node needs to have like a place just for the car to pull off to unload, and then
and potentially some good signage or clarity around. We even had discussed on Monday, like what if you had like a fridge to store your groceries in after you went to the farmer's market and actually wanted to enjoy the plaza. Like there could be some interesting things in terms of the mobility hubs here that really facilitate the use of the transit network instead of just driving.
Great, thank you.
I have a few quick round comments to make, and I'll make them really condensed because I know we're almost out of time, but want to make sure you're attentive to road widths and can generally push down to 10 feet when you don't have large vehicles, 11 when you do, 12 is probably not necessary on this site. Maybe a little bit of attention to the transit center, keeping buses in the lane of traffic and using that extra space for offsite or off-board fare collection potentially. Being thoughtful about potentially designing surface parking that is well designed instead of trying to bury it in buildings, because if you're only at 4 stories, the economics of that can get a little bit challenging. I think people try to say, oh, it'll just get buried, when a well-designed surface slot can accomplish a lot of that. And really love the plaza, the way you tied everything together. Also maybe independent bike facilities on this north-south route in purple if you're going to jog your north-south streets within the kind of urban fabric of the walkable area, or create a more dedicated bike facility within there.
Awesome, dude. Did you guys understand the independent bike facility comment?
Like a separated bike lane?
Yes.
Yeah, that's
All
definitely
right.
something we can consider. Thank you.
All right, fantastic. We do still have 2 minutes for just closing comments, general observations, anything else anybody wants to suggest. These students are about to go on in 2 minutes. Their spring break starts. What should they be thinking about in the back of their head, looking at, or, you know, are they being bold enough? Are they being too bold? What do you guys think?
One overall, oh, go ahead.
I guess I would never come into the lane of these aspiring students and professionals to tell them not to be too bold. So be bold, go for it. Go for it. All we can do, you know, as a collective body that's looking at ways to improve living and working and playing and shopping in DeKalb County is to see, you know, what the possibilities are. And so I've always enjoyed being a part of these meetings to see what you students bring to us in terms of possibilities. So keep at it.
Thank you. Duke, did you have a comment?
Yeah, just want to say really appreciated all of the awesome work saw today. And I think different groups have done this in different ways, but just encourage everyone to be really attentive to what existing conditions you're embracing and what new conditions you're proposing, and how you're really leaning into the interaction between those two things and not letting it be existing conditions that you're not super enthusiastic about and they're just vestiges, or new things that you're proposing that are blowing things out of the water, but being intentional about those two groups and how they interact.
So any advice for spring break thoughts? Not when they finally get to sleep, get to take a breath, get to
Just enjoy it. You all did great work, and looking forward after you're rested to get back to it and see the final results.
Absolutely. In fact,
And just
go ahead, Alicia.
I was going to add, and maybe if you haven't, I know that you've been to the sites, the different proposed sites. If you haven't, go have the experiences in Scottdale if you can during spring break. I don't know what you guys are doing, but if you have the ability to go eat at a restaurant, go actually do something in Scottdale, go do it.
Absolutely. We did have a good dinner at Piazza already.
I would say think
But,
about how to convey your design ideas from an on the ground point of view, from a person's eye view of the site. 'Cause that's how people will experience it. They won't experience it as a diagram, from an aerial diagram.
Absolutely. Eye level perspectives. Yeah.
I've always had trouble like looking at a master plan, translating, thinking about what does that mean practically for what the built environment looks like. So sometimes it just looks like a bunch of squares on a piece of paper.
Yeah. No, there's still quite a lot of work. I mean, I think it's especially those three-dimensional perspective views at eye level. A lot of the experiential kinds of drawings are definitely what we still need. We have a month. I think if we've kind of got the bone, I think everybody's project has the bones there. Now it's kind of putting a little more flesh on those bones. So, all right. Thank you so much, everyone who's participated. And to the students, stay safe, be good, but have a really great spring break.
Thank you.
Have a great
Take
spring
care.
break.
Enjoy
Thanks,
your
Ellen.
break.
Have everyone.
Bye.
Thanks.
Thank you. Happy spring break, everyone.